Thanks. Thank you very much, Jan-Christoph, for this very kind introduction. Parlerò in inglese, ma comunque dopo, quando avremo forse l'occasione di avere un dialogo, possiamo anche parlare in italiano. Allora, one of the most dominant courses, well, this is fantastic, thank you very much. I thought we are super niche and marginal, and now we are dominant, fantastic. I will hope my colleagues are listening, because it has not been easy to establish this a bit, let's say, study course, which is called Master in Eco-Social Design. And still sometimes it's a bit of a struggle because we're expanding a lot the notion of design, and I think also do something which Jan Eckert was talking about, not only design. So many of the things we are doing, some colleagues might say, well, this is not design because blah, blah, blah. Uninteresting conversation. I'm really interested what it is doing, what are the effects of it. And then if you call it design, art, social work, entrepreneurship, activism, commoning, and so on and so forth is a secondary. And I won't talk so much about education and also not about technology. Because I'm trying to, the content. You said the content is causa, no? And here is important, look, okay, what is the world we're living in and what is ahead of us? And if it's about humanizing something, then it's maybe humanizing society. And maybe it's not only humanizing, because it's, I mean, in the days and in the area we're living in this period of terrible mass extinction of species, of incredible, brutal inequalities, and relations of exploitation between humans, among humans, and between humans and others, other more than humans or humans in nature, I think humanizing might be not enough. Anyways, this said, you could call it social ecological transformation. Some call it like this. This is what we might need. And this is what this Master in Eco-Social Design is framed around. What is this, you might ask? And for this, I cite, on one hand, the ELA Collective, which says it's a fundamental transformation of political and economic systems away from fossil fuels and the growth logic and towards an economy that ensures a decent life for all. This goes deeper than a reform. Yes, it is less abrupt than a revolution. And Ulrich Brandt, political scientist, and Markus Wissen, sociologist, add it is informed by social ecology, practice theory, and political ecology, and I would say also by much more things is what we need as a package of instruments, knowledges, and methods, and so on and so forth. So here we already see it, these things beyond design, which we need, and we as designers can be maybe contributors because of the, let's say, transformative power of design, as Jan Eckert called it, and the ability to make complex things tangible and testable and in iterative processes. This is definitely a strength we bring to the game. And yeah, many of you might know it or not. It's the so-called donut of the donut economics by the economist Kate Raworth. And it shows a little bit where it should go in general. No, not to overshoot on planetary boundaries such as ocean acidification or climate change or biodiversity loss and so on and so forth. In many of these points we are at tipping points or close to tipping points, and we know all these alarming messages. And on the other hand, there's something she calls social foundation, where we should not go below. This is, among other, also education, and this was also education for all. Peace and justice, political voice, social equity, gender equity. So some of these keywords which have been mentioned already, and so on and so forth. So the big question is, so how to go there? But because in a way, it's interesting, no? Almost everybody seems to be, yes, we need this. Yeah, there's even, how's this called, the guy from BlackRock, Larry something, even he says, yes, it's super important, it's the defining factor of companies in the long term. Ursula von der Leyen, Joe Biden, the people on the streets in the Fridays movement, more radical people from Ende Gelände, there's system change, not climate change. So you might wonder, you might ask, so why is it not happening? If everybody is for it, why is it not happening? I think this is a key question we should understand better. And there we need the knowledge which does not come from design, but from more analytical disciplines. And yeah, my daughter intervened on my slides, putting in strange comments and memes. She's an anarcha-communist, I have to say. But there's something right to it. This seems to be a problem, no? And when you see, no, we need this degrowth, that is very clear. There is no decoupling of resource throughput, energy consumption, and economic growth, and it won't happen. And this is not me stating it, but a lot of scientific underpinnings are for this statement there. And we see that the only moments of degrowth are the moments of crisis. The last one, the Corona crisis, has to be still drawn in. While degrowth is definitely needed, this is the IPCC scenarios towards a safe space, let's say, for humanity, towards the 1.5 degree target. And then almost everybody else, the same people who are for it, say, oh my God, growth, degrowth, we are not growing anymore. How can this function? No, this is most terrible news when growth is not working. Though there seems to be a bit of a contradiction, and yet again, she entered a funny or not so funny slide and meme. So yes, the problem is capitalism, but also this maybe does not help us exactly to be, as designers, able to prototype and do something about it. So I've been discovering a, let's say, theoretical framework which is a bit less abstract than the pure, let's say, Marxist critique of socioeconomy. And it's called the imperial mode of living and production. And there's been a collective which also has been collaborating with designers to make this a bit hard to understand the book of Ulrich Brandt and Markus Wissen more accessible. And it's called At the Expense of Others, How the Imperial Mode of Living Prevents Good Life for All. And with this we can understand why it is so difficult to change, even so every reasonable person understands that we need this change. And I cannot go in depth in this now, this would take too much time, but on top we see a bit the features of this imperial mode of living, and it should be named imperial mode of living and production. Parts of it, unavoidably, are the exploitation of labor and the biosphere. The whole system is exclusive. So if you just, as an example, 3% of humanity are flying. It's very exclusive. Only very few can afford it. But it's causing 9% of greenhouse gases. Also exclusive is an example that we are building walls about Europe, around Europe, protecting us from people who would just access the same level of wealth as we have. This is imperial, okay? So it's exclusive in many ways, and it's expanding and intensifying. So also people in other middle classes in Brazil, in China, etc., they want to have and do the same. And it's pushing the costs onto other people in the future who might not have anymore a livable planet. And also spatially, so in other regions, you just have to think about how our clothes are produced and so on and so forth. And why is this so stable? It's so stable because it's part of everyday knowledge, everyday practices. It's part of our material infrastructure, so you cannot ask people to not take the car if the infrastructures and services are made for cars. And they have to commute from work to home and back. If not, they would not have the job, and they are forced to have a job to make a living. If you don't have a job, it's hard to survive and feel good in society. We have institutions who stabilize all of this, and we have pseudo-solutions which are propagated by institutional networks, for example, e-cars. And so this is just for a very, very quick overview. All of these points are worth discussing much longer, and particularly the interrelations among them. It's for a reason that the whole book is written about it, and several articles followed it. And then the ELA Collective made an attempt to draw and, let's say, a utopic version of this. And I think this is very important. It might not be this the best utopia we can imagine, but I would like to encourage you and all who are also engaged in teaching to say, okay, what is this all about? Where do we actually want to go? How should it be if it really works out? If we work for transformation, if it really works out, where would we like to live? How would the world function? And to do this not in a totally naive way, to say, oh, we will all love each other. It's not this kind of hippie-esque idea of understanding, but really also systematically to say, okay, we will have maybe a logic of care and not a logic of competition. This will be knowledge of reproduction work, so the work which usually is not paid. There will be recognized, taken into account the interdependence with nature and will not be considered resources in sinks, and so on and so forth. A lot of very important democratization, above all, of economy. No, economy is not democratic. Companies are not democratic, on common goods, and obviously on sufficiency. And this is stabilized, again, by institutions, by democratic control in a subsidiary way, and so on and so forth. Again, here, a lot to discuss. Then you could say, okay, then what has design to do with it? And if yes, how to approach it? So the first question was answered by Jan Eckert, the transformative power of design. Going from there, from such kind of ideas, and there are many other very good ideas of that kind, to do something about it, acknowledging the complexity of the venture, and still making it able to make concrete steps, step by step in an iterative way, because what we for sure also know that making big master plans never worked out if the complexity is too high. Also this is a good answer by a philosopher of what design has to do with it, and why most of design, which is operative today, is actually not design, because I think the situation it is working towards are not desirable. To sell more products or to stimulate needs for more products, which are needs based on distinction, not based on conviviality and togetherness, or based on competition. This is not preferable, therefore this is not design, in my definition, agreeing with Herbert Simon. Okay, so for design strategies, I propose, and you can chop up the cake in many different ways. This is very, very, very rough. But makes it possible to discuss it also with students, to say, okay, where do you see your work and what do you do for making it work in this way? Strategies of transformation, you could say, okay, making things public and protest is super important. And because this whole transformation is not without conflicts and without unveiling things. And I'm going to show a few examples of this, which you know. And I'm going to skip a lot of slides, and all of them have design elements. There's one which is more closer to design in terms of that this is an architecture group who did this, called Raumlabor from Berlin. They do a lot of interventionalist temporary architecture, also in the context of protest. This was in the G8 protest in 2007 in Heiligendamm, and they made a replica of the luxury hotel Kempinski, where all the super important people were living, for the activists, so to say, the luxury hotel in small for the activists, which became the core organizational and convivial center. And here we have again the community and this making things together in a beautiful setting. And they built this Silver Pearl Congress Center and Spa. Many other examples how design, and I include art and other things in this, can help to make things public, to make protest more effective, to show what is behind the things. So, for example, all the gray energy used to produce one Big Mac, or you could, and we know these kind of images, and they create awareness and hopefully stimulate action for change. Another thing where people are already more active in creating alternatives is what I would call the connected niche approach, and we know eco-villages, transition towns, more radical alternatives on a small scale, and but the important thing that they are not marginalized or co-opted is to network them. And also here, I think particularly in networking, designers can be very useful. For example, this is the thesis work of Maike Hollneicher, a student of our study course, who actually in COVID times managed to find a lot of pioneer farmers in South Tyrol, and which is a monoculture-driven agricultural system, apple and wine, and a lot of pesticide use for making this possible. But within this dominant agricultural regime, there are a few pioneers. And the interesting thing she discovered is they are quite disconnected. They are very strong personalities, strong pioneer personality, but they would be much stronger if they would connect to have more visibility. And therefore, she created a thing which she called farmfluencers, because the farmfluencers of South Tyrol, and she connected them also to learn from each other, so they do not have to reinvent the wheel again and again. And therefore, she used designerly methods, mapping tools, but also in a convivial setting, and so on and so forth. And she analytically understood very well what she's doing. She obviously used design methods to understand the process, and she obviously used a bit of a theory, transition theory, to understand better where in the, let's say, diverse transition models she can refer to and learn from. So I think this connection to theory is always very important, if not things risk to be naive. And therefore, all the rest I skip. Okay, there's a lot of design activities in this, let's say, thing we call connected niche approach, and it's also creating alternative economies which are here mapped. I have to go quicker. The contrary, so to say, might be change from within big established companies or structures. And there are these new kind of consultancies, with kind of, let's say, transformation consultancies for big businesses, like, for example, the Dive or OpenState, both from Berlin. This is how they work, very agile, flatten hierarchies, be more creative. Very, very influential is Frédéric Laloux with his book Reinventing Organizations. And if you see the keywords in there, it's about whole person, it's trust, it's self-management, it's self-organization. So a lot of things which also in radical alternatives already have been tested since decades. Now they're entering this corporate sector, and I think there is a potential in it. Yeah, Jan-Christoph, I didn't ask you if I can use some slides for you. Now I do it. I hope it's not too late. Service design I see also as a change from within thing. No, there's a big potential in it, and it tries to bring in cooperation, empowerment, involvement, and so on in big structures in a very planned way, because here, opposed to the radical niche, everything has to be under control, sure, because a lot of budget, also the people who put the budget want that things work according to certain plans, and therefore a lot of planning and communication of plans are made. And last but not least, technological innovation. Yes, I will talk very shortly about technology, which I'm a big fan of technology, but not a believer that it will solve anything if it's not used in the right way. Obviously, we have ideas like cradle to cradle, how to close material loops biologically or technically. Obviously, we have something like circular design, became very popular also in big design companies, IDEO, and others. And we see here again, like in service design, this is a bit of an engineeristic approach to things. And we have the famous Fairphone to make things open, accessible, reusable, repairable, and a lot of things it showed. It makes things transparent, the supply chain, but also the budgeting, what goes to what, and all the things which usually in classical big business is covered by brand communication and marketing bullshit. And I think the best effect the Fairphone did is not that it itself became terribly successful, it became terribly known, but that it changed how Apple and other brands, they adapted. They saw, wow, this created so much awareness for this. So this is not about technological change so much in the Fairphone, but was a really fantastic communication project. But therefore, they had to make it work technologically. If not, it would not have been credible. I think we have to skip this because this is weaknesses and risks and strengths and potential of each of these 4 major approaches. If not, can I have another 20 minutes? No, I was just kidding. No. We will skip this. We will do this another time, hopefully, and I can give you the slides and you can complete the lists yourself. Just this 1 or 2 minutes about, okay, what has this to do with education and why there's something went wrong with this slide. Why is our study course as it is? And I did not tell you how it is, and there are definitely many, many different ways how to do it. This is not the only one, and it's just how we developed it. And it's bringing together in one field, which we call observe, analyze, and apply, courses in, for example, political ecology, in eco-social economics, in cultural anthropology, and very important in moderation and participation. On the other hand, we have courses in make and intervene, so all the things which are useful for prototyping, for understanding materials, and so on and so forth, for the crafts in it, so to say. And they are very interconnected, and we consciously don't call it theory and practice, because also here on the left here, we have a lot of practice, and on the right you use a lot of theory. And at the core is the students learning by doing projects, but always accompanied by a bunch of these courses. No student does everything, it's impossible, but all of them do design research in their project practices. And all of them work with external partners, and most of the partners are not the usual partners of design. There might be Cooperativa di Comunità della Alta Val Venosta, there might be people who do community development in popular neighborhoods, but there is also Saleva, a big corporation, or a research institute. So they have also to learn how to cooperate in very diverse settings, and so on and so forth. So this is why we call it an educational framework, and it's offering an environment where students pick and learn practice-based in a transdisciplinary way. And last but not least, advertisement for our annual conference, which is called By Design, by Disaster, connected to all these kind of topics, this time about transformative work for livelihoods, or how to pay your rent with transformative work, and how we have to transform work to make this possible. Thank you very much.